Hey y'all, let's talk about measurement. Whenever we measure really anything, we're always going to use one of two systems of measurement. Those two systems are the US customary system and the metric system. Here in the US, anytime we're doing any everyday measurement, we're going to use the US customary system. So when I say how much do I weigh, or how tall am I, or how much flour do I need to add to this baking recipe, I'm going to use US customary units. The only time I'd really use metric units are in some very specific circumstances. For example, if I were doing a science experiment, I would usually use metric units to do my measurements. In other countries, however, they use metric for pretty much everything. They don't really use US customary at all. The first measurement type I would like to discuss is length. When you measure length, what you're measuring is the distance from one point to another. In the US, we usually use feet, inches, yards, and miles. Those are our US customary units for length. If you take a look at this ruler, what you're seeing is about 1 foot. Now, if you had a real ruler, that would definitely be exactly 1 foot. But this is probably not to scale. It is probably not the right size because it's just a picture. As you can see, each of these numbers marks off an inch. And so there are 12 inches in this 1 foot ruler because there are 12 inches in a foot. 12 inches exactly. If I were to line up 3 of these 1 foot rulers, I would get 1 yard. And if I were to line up 5,280 of these rulers, I would get 1 mile because there's 5,280 feet in 1 mile. Wow, that would be a lot of rulers. In metric units, all of the length measurements have the word meter in them. This doesn't work for other units of other types of measurement. But when you're looking at length, you can always know that if it's metric, it'll have meters in it. And if it is US customary, it will not have meters in it. There's no crossover. What you're looking at here is a 30 centimeter ruler. The ruler itself isn't its own unit, like we had with the foot-long ruler. And I know that because after centimeter, the next largest unit is the meter. And I know that there are 100 centimeters in 1 meter. This is definitely not 100 centimeters, so this can't be a meter stick. This is 30 centimeters. Now you'll see there are little lines in between the larger lines that indicate centimeters. Those little lines represent millimeters. And there are 10 millimeters in every centimeter. So if I know that there are 10 millimeters in every one of these centimeters, and there's 30 centimeters, that means there's 30 tens. 10 30 times. And 10 times 30 is 300. So I know that this stick has 300 millimeters on it. I also can use the same math to figure out how many millimeters are in a meter. Because I know that there are 100 centimeters in a meter, and every one of those centimeters has 10 millimeters in it. That's 10 100 times. And 10 times 100 is 1,000 millimeters. So I know that there are 1,000 millimeters in 1 meter. After meters, the next largest unit in the metric system for length is the kilometer. There are 1,000 meters in every kilometer. So if you take a look at this centimeter, a kilometer would be 100 times that to get to a meter, 1,000 of those 100 centimeters. That's pretty big. What would you use to measure different things? Which unit would you use to measure your height? Would you use miles to measure your height? No, I think miles would be a bit big. I don't think any of us are anywhere near a mile high. How about millimeters? Would you use millimeters to measure your height? You certainly could, but they're very small, and it would take a while to count up all the millimeters of your height. I also think that if someone asked you how tall you were and you told them in millimeters, it'd be pretty hard for them to picture what that looks like. So, in US customary units, the best way to measure your height would be inches, feet, or a combination of the two. For example, I am 5 feet and 4 inches tall. In metric units, it would be best to measure your height in meters or centimeters or a combination of the two. What would you use to measure the length of your bedroom? What unit would you use to measure the width of a pencil? What unit would you use to measure the distance from your house to the school? Next, I'd like to talk about weight. When we're talking about measuring weight, what we're actually measuring is the pull of gravity on an object. So how much is gravity attempting to pull that object to the floor? When we talk about how much we weigh, usually we're not even talking about weight, because weight can actually change depending on where the object is, because it's just about how much gravity is pulling on that object. When we talk about weight, we usually use US customary units: ounces, pounds, tons. There are 16 ounces in a pound, ounces being the smallest unit. And then, if we're in just 1 ton, there's 2,000 pounds. Now let's talk about mass. Usually when you ask yourself, how much do I weigh? Or how much does this basket of fruit weigh? Or something like that. What you're really asking is, how much matter does it have? When we measure mass, we're going to use grams or kilograms. Those are our metric units. So usually we are going to describe our weight in weight measurements, like ounces, pounds, and tons. But what we really want to know is what our mass is, because we're not asking for a measurement that's going to change depending on where we're standing or sitting or laying. And our weight would change depending on where we're standing, sitting, or laying, because it's just about how much the gravity is pulling on us. What won't change, no matter where we are, is the amount of matter that we are made up of. So if I ask, I wonder how much I weigh, what I'm really asking is, I wonder how much matter I have. Now let's talk about volume, which you could also say as capacity. Volume, or capacity, refers to the space an object takes up. So if you can imagine you're carrying around this bottle of soda and you spill some of it on the ground. That soda is still taking up the same amount of space. It still has the same volume. It's taking up different space now that it's on the floor, but it still has the same volume. It's still taking up the same amount of space. The base unit for describing volume in metric units is liters. In 1 liter, we have 1,000 milliliters. And in 1 kiloliter, we have 1,000 liters. So milliliters are the smallest, and if we have 1,000 of them, we get 1 liter. And then if we have 1,000 of those liters, we have 1 kiloliter. Now you may be used to seeing a big bottle of soda like this. This is known as a 2-liter bottle. If you were to only have that bottle filled up halfway, then it would be exactly 1 liter, which is 1,000 milliliters. It would take 1,000 of these to make 1 kiloliter. That would be a lot of soda or water. If you're wondering how much does a milliliter look like, if you were to look at your typical teaspoon measurement, like you would have in your kitchen, you can fit about 4 milliliters in there. It's not a perfect measurement. It's not equivalent, but this is pretty close to what 4 milliliters look like. So a quarter teaspoon would be pretty close to a milliliter. When we talk about US customary units, we use the units cups, pints, quarts, and gallons. What you're looking at right in here is an example of a cup. Now, because our volume units fit so well into each other, if you were to go and find a 1 cup measure in your kitchen, it would help you to picture what a pint looks like, what a quart looks like, and what a gallon looks like. So I very much encourage you to ask whoever you live with to help you find a 1 cup measure. Fill it up with water and take a look at it. That is 1 cup. 2 of those would make 1 pint. And 2 of those pints would make a quart. And 4 of those quarts would make a gallon. So 16 of those cups would make 1 gallon. You can see here that when I fill up this measuring cup all the way to the pint line, it is exactly twice as much as when I had 1 cup, because there are 2 cups in a pint. If you've ever seen a quart before, it might have looked something like this. Sometimes milk is sold in quarts. So you might be able to find a quart of milk or juice or something like that in your refrigerator or at the store. A gallon is 4 times as much as a quart. This is more likely what you're seeing milk in your refrigerator. Usually milk is sold by the gallon. So if we were to take 16 of those cups that you measured, that would exactly fill up this 1 gallon carton. Now I'm going to teach you a pretty easy way to remember all of this information by telling you a kind of silly story. Once there was the king of Gallon. And so to help me illustrate this story, I'm going to draw a really big G. And if you were trying to remember this story while you were taking a test or trying to measure something, you could draw this as well, and it would help you figure out how many of each type of measurement is in another type of measurement. So once there was the king of Gallon, I'm going to draw a really big G. It's got to be really big. The king of Gallon loved his wives so much that he had 4 of them, 4 queens. And I know that's pretty creepy, but hey, it's memorable, and that's the whole point of this story, is for you to remember it. The king of Gallon had 4 queens. And so when you look at this, you should see that 1 gallon has 4 quarts. With each queen, the king of Gallon had 2 children, a prince and a princess. And so when you look at this, you should notice that each queen or court has 2 princesses or 2 princes, or you could say each court has 2 pints. And each prince and princess had 2 crowns. Of course they had 2 crowns. They had to have one for just their everyday life, wearing a crown all the time, no matter what they're doing. And then you've got to have a really fancy crown for parties and royal events and that kind of thing. So once you've finished this illustration, you can see here that in 1 gallon, there are 4 quarts. And in each quart, there's 2 pints, and in each pint, there's 2 cups. I can also use this to figure out how many cups are in a gallon. If someone was to ask me this, I could just draw this image and then count. In 1 gallon, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 cups. In each quart, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 cups. In each gallon, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pints. So I definitely recommend that you remember this story and draw it anytime you need to. I actually have a friend who used to work in the kitchen of a restaurant, and she told me they had a really big picture of this hung up on their wall to remind them how many quarts are in a gallon, how many pints are in a quart, and how many cups are in a pint, because it's really important when you're cooking to know those measurements. So that is definitely a useful illustration that you can use all your life. Please remember that if you have any questions, you can always email me at jgromley@hampton.k12.va.us. I know that that was a lot of information to take in, so please feel free to watch this video as many times as you need to and ask me any questions. All right, have a good day.